Welcome, my dreamers of darkness tonight. The fire burns low and the night grows deep. Let me tell you a story of a child who whispered to the wind, and the wind whispered back. There was once a small town hidden between the hills of northern Greece, the kind of place that tourists never found, where the fog rolled in like the sea and left behind the smell of wet, stone and forgotten prayers. In that town lived an 8-year-old girl named Leila. She had auburn hair that shimmered like autumn, fire under the sunlight, and eyes so deep they looked like two pieces of twilight. People said she was strange, too quiet, too observant, the sort of child who listened to things that weren't meant to be heard. Leila's parents loved her deeply, though they never quite understood her. Her father, Nikos, was a fisherman. Her mother, Irina, tended to herbs and flowers. Their home was old, an ancestral stone house whose walls remembered too many winters. On quiet nights, the sea's echo would drift through the cracks, sounding like distant whispers. One rainy evening, Leila found something unusual. While exploring the attic, a place she was forbidden to go, she discovered a small wooden box wrapped in faded black cloth. Inside it was a fragment of parchment, dry and brittle, written in some language she couldn't read. The letters twisted like tiny snakes, curling across the surface. But what caught her attention most wasn't the writing. It was the drawing, a circle surrounded by ancient symbols, and at its center a single painted eye. She didn't know it then, but she had found a remnant of a forgotten cult, a fragment of something older than Christianity itself, something that once worshipped the spirits of the night. That night she dreamt of the sea turning black, of waves that whispered her name. When she awoke, her window was open, though she remembered locking it. Days passed and Leila began to change in small, quiet ways. She started spending more time near the cliffs, drawing circles in the sand with her fingers, whispering words she didn't understand. One afternoon, her mother called her in for dinner. Leila ignored her. Irina sighed, stepping outside, and found her daughter staring at something in the distance, the old well that no one used anymore. The well was said to be cursed. 2 children had drowned there decades ago, but Leila stood at its edge, humming softly, her small hands tracing invisible lines in the air. The next morning, Irina found a dead crow near their doorstep. Its eyes were missing when Leila was 8 years, 3 months, and 7 days old. Her father remembered that exact number for the rest of his life. Something happened that no one could explain. Her parents were arguing in the kitchen. A simple thing: money, the storm, the boat that needed repair. Leila sat in her room, clutching the piece of parchment. She felt the heat rise in her chest, anger, confusion, fear. She whispered a single word she didn't remember learning, and then the lights flickered. In the kitchen, Nikos froze. The glass of water on the table cracked from within. The candle flame twisted into a spiral, then went out. Irina screamed. Her eyes rolled back for a moment as she felt something brush against her neck, something cold and unseen. She dropped to the floor, trembling but alive. When the neighbors came, they said it was a seizure. They said maybe gas had leaked, maybe it was stress. Maybe they were tired, but Leila knew what she had done. And somewhere deep inside, a tiny spark of pride flickered. For weeks after that, she didn't speak much. But she began to listen to the whisper of leaves, the hum of insects, the heartbeat of the earth beneath her feet. She began collecting small things: bones, dried flowers, candle wax, and bits of blackened salt. Her mother grew pale. She often woke up at night to find her daughter sitting by the window, watching the moon, not blinking, not moving, just staring. Her father began sleeping in the living room with a cross near his chest. Then came the accident, the kind of real, believable thing that could happen in any village. One afternoon, Irina slipped on the wet stone floor while carrying hot oil from the kitchen. The pot fell. The oil splashed across her arm, scalding her badly. Neighbors rushed in. But before anyone could react, Leila stood over her mother, whispering something under her breath. The burn stopped spreading. The pain numbed almost instantly. But later that night, when Irina looked at her arm, she saw faint symbols etched under her skin, black lines that glowed faintly under moonlight. They faded by morning. But from that day on, Irina never touched her daughter again. Leila's power was growing. By the time she turned 10, she could make candles flicker just by breathing on them. By 12, she could summon wind where there was none. By 16, she vanished from the town completely. But every year on the night of October 31st, people swore they saw a figure walking along the cliffs. A woman with auburn hair, a long purple robe, and a glowing book in her hands. They said she whispered the names of the dead into the wind. They said if you listened too closely, she'd whisper yours back. The nights after her mother's accident grew heavier, not colder, not darker, just heavier, as if the air itself remembered what Leila had done. Sometimes, when she tried to sleep, the shadows in her room moved, not like the gentle sway of curtains or candlelight, but slow, deliberate movements, as though something unseen was crawling along the walls, searching for its way back into her dreams. Her father had stopped talking to her. Her mother avoided her eyes. Even the cat refused to enter her room. One evening, Leila sat by the dying fire staring at the old piece of parchment. The letters seemed different now, no longer twisting but breathing. A faint shimmer ran across the symbols like light reflecting off oil. She reached out, touched one of the letters, and felt a pulse beneath her fingertip. It beat, once, then again, like a heart. She gasped and pulled her hand away, but it was too late. From the fireplace came a soft hiss, a whisper buried inside the crackling wood. "Do you hear me?" The voice was faint, genderless, neither kind nor cruel, just present. Leila froze. She thought she was imagining it. But then it spoke again, low and rhythmic like the tide. "Child of silence, you called once and I listened." The fire dimmed. The air thickened, heavy with a smell like rain on burnt stone. And in the orange glow of the embers, she saw it, a faint outline forming in the soot. A face, hollow-eyed, smiling. Leila didn't scream. She couldn't. Instead, she whispered back, "Who are you?" The fire crackled, sparks jumping upward like frightened stars. Then the voice said, "I am the space between what dies and what is remembered. And you, little one, you opened a door that never closes." The ember's light went out, leaving her in complete darkness, and in that darkness, Leila's world changed forever. By morning, she could hear them, the whispers beneath the walls. At first, she thought it was the wind, but the sound wasn't random. It followed rhythm, language, tone. It was as if dozens of tiny mouths were speaking softly through the stones of the house. When she pressed her ear to the wall, the whispering stopped, only to start again somewhere else. Her mother grew weaker with every passing day. She often forgot things, names, faces, even her own prayers. Leila noticed a pattern. The nights her mother forgot the most were the nights the whispering was loudest. One afternoon, while cleaning the floor, Irina fainted. Her skin had turned pale, her veins dark, almost black. The local priest came, muttered prayers, sprinkled holy water, and left quickly. He didn't meet Leila's eyes. No one ever did anymore. That night, Leila sat beside her mother's bed, candlelight trembling against the cracked ceiling. Her mother slept, her breath shallow. Leila touched her hand, cold, fragile, and for the first time, felt regret bite through her like a blade. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. "I didn't mean to hurt you." The air shifted. From somewhere near the window came a slow, deliberate tap, tap, tap like fingernails against glass. Leila turned and saw something she couldn't explain. The glass fogged up from the outside, and then, slowly, 3 words appeared in the condensation, written backward, but readable. "Bring her back." Her pulse froze. The same whispering voice echoed faintly, this time from the wall itself. "Bring her back, and you will never be alone again." Leila's hands shook. She knew she should run, but the temptation, that tiny, desperate hope, was too strong. She opened her spell book. It wasn't really a book, just the parchment, now thicker, its letters alive with faint golden veins. When she placed her hand on it, warmth surged through her palm, crawling up her arm like fire and ice intertwined. The candle beside her flickered, the flame stretching taller. The walls began to breathe again, and her mother's hand twitched. The ritual wasn't something she had learned. It came instinctively, as if her blood remembered what her mind did not. Leila drew the circle on the floor using candle wax and salt. She whispered her mother's name 3 times, each quieter than the last. Then she tore a small piece of her own hair, dropped it into the flame, and closed her eyes. "Please," she breathed. "Please just let her wake up." For a moment, nothing. Then a sound, like a sigh from beneath the earth. Her mother's eyes snapped open. Leila gasped with joy and reached for her. But what she saw next froze her heart. Irina's eyes were not her mother's eyes, they were black. Entirely, endlessly black, reflecting the candlelight like 2 bottomless wells. When she spoke, her voice was layered, part Irina, part something older. "You kept your promise," it said. "Now keep mine." Leila stumbled backward. No, this isn't you." But the thing smiled through her mother's lips. The whispering in the walls grew into a hum, like chanting from a distant temple. Irina's hand reached out and gripped Leila's wrist with impossible strength. Leila screamed, trying to pull away, but the voice was inside her head now. "Every gift has its price." The candle burst, spilling wax across the floor. The fire leapt to the curtains, swallowing the room in a heartbeat. Leila tore free and dragged her mother's body from the flames. But when she looked back, the bed was gone. Only ash remained. By dawn, the house had burned down. The neighbors found Leila sitting in the yard, covered in soot, holding the scorched piece of parchment to her chest. She said nothing, didn't cry, didn't blink. Her father, broken and hollow, couldn't look at her. He left that morning and never returned. Leila was 8 years old, an orphan, a rumor, a curse. But as she watched the smoke rise into the bright morning sky, something inside her stirred, a pulse deep in her veins, faint but unmistakable. The same voice, quiet and calm, whispered once more inside her mind, "You brought her back. You can bring anything back." Leila looked at her hands, small, trembling, streaked with ash, and she smiled. The first real smile she'd smiled in years. It wasn't the smile of a child anymore. It was the beginning of something ancient, something waiting to return every Halloween night, in every candle's flicker and every whisper between worlds. Years passed. The village rebuilt what the fire had taken, everything except the memory of what had happened in that house. People whispered about it only when the nights were longest, and the moon turned orange. Leila had grown, no longer the soot-covered child, but a quiet girl with hollow eyes, living on the edge of the ruins where her family once lived. The villagers called her the Cursed Child, or the Witch's Echo, but she didn't mind. Silence had become her only companion. She spent her days collecting herbs near the forest and her nights listening to the soft voices that lived beneath the earth. They were different now, clearer, almost kind. They spoke of balance, of old magic buried beneath Greek soil, older than temples, older than gods. Sometimes they told her stories about forgotten priests who built stone labyrinths under the sea, about women who spoke to storms, about spirits trapped inside the feathers of birds. And that was how she first heard about the man who spoke to crows. He was said to wander the mountains north of the valley, a hermit, half mad, half prophet, with eyes as black as night and a tongue that spoke both prayers and curses. The villagers feared him, but Leila felt drawn to him, as if his name itself was a magnet tugging at the oldest parts of her soul. One dusk, beneath the bleeding sunset, she decided to find him. The path was narrow, carved through thorny trees that whispered as she passed. Crows followed her, dozens of them, not cawing, just watching, their wings rustling like murmured secrets. By the time the moon rose, she found him sitting beside a broken shrine, surrounded by bones and candle stubs. He wasn't old, maybe 30, though his skin carried the wear of centuries. His beard was silver, his robes torn, but his eyes glowed faintly red in the firelight, reflecting the same strange pulse she had seen in her spellbook years ago. "You shouldn't be here," he said without turning. His voice was rough, yet calm, like the sound of stone grinding against stone. "I'm looking for answers," Leila replied. He chuckled softly, still facing the flames. "That's what they all say before they forget what the question was." "I lost my mother," she said. He turned to her then, slowly, and for a heartbeat, his face seemed to blur as if it belonged to someone else. "Lost?" he said, his tone almost mocking. "Or traded?" Leila froze. He smiled, not kindly. "Magic doesn't take what isn't offered. Even children bargain when they bleed." The fire popped. A crow landed on his shoulder. It leaned forward, whispering into his ear. He nodded, listening as though to an equal. "Do you understand them?" Leila asked. The man's expression softened. "The crows remember what humans forget. They see through time. They fly between the worlds where light and shadow kiss." He stood, his movements deliberate, ritual-like. "Come," he said, "and I'll show you what they see." He led her up a winding path to a cliff that overlooked the valley. Below them, the forest stretched out, black and endless, the village lights flickering like dying stars. The moon hung enormous and low, staining the sky a deep copper orange. The crows circled above. Hundreds of them, they made no sound. "Close your eyes," he said. Leila hesitated, but did as he asked. "Now breathe in." The air filled with the scent of ash and iron. Listen to the wings. A strange rhythm surrounded her, as though the air itself was pulsing. She felt it inside her chest, and 1,000 heartbeats merging into one. "Do you hear them?" he whispered. "Yes," she breathed. "They're calling your name, little witch." Her eyes opened, and the world was gone. She was standing in darkness. Not empty darkness, living darkness. Shapes moved within it, fast and weightless. Above her, black wings unfolded, stretching across the entire sky. Below, rivers of silver flowed through a sea of bones. And standing beside her was the Crowman, his robe now glowing faintly with symbols she recognized, the same ones from her spellbook. "This," he said, "is the place between breath and shadow, where old gods sleep." Leila's heart pounded. "What do they want from me?" He turned to her, his red eyes now burning brighter. "They don't want. They remember. And they remember you." He reached into his robe and drew out a small charred feather, black as midnight but shimmering faintly with gold at the edges. He handed it to her. "This once belonged to Nyx herself," he said, "the goddess of night. Long before mortals named her Myth." Leila stared at it. "Why are you giving it to me?" He smiled. Or maybe the shadow smiled through him. "Because you're not just a witch, child. You're what happens when darkness learns to dream." Suddenly, she was back on the cliff. The crows screamed, a sound like tearing metal and thunder mixed together. The man was gone. Only the feather remained, glowing faintly in her hand. When she looked down at the valley, the lights of the village flickered and then, one by one, went out. The moon dimmed. The air grew colder. And then from far below, she heard something, a faint but unmistakable, her mother's voice, whispering, calling her name. "Leila, come home." Her eyes widened. "Mother?" But the voice changed, deepened, until it became something else entirely. "We never leave, little witch. We wait. Every Halloween we wait for you to open the door again." The feather pulsed once, and in that instant she saw it, not with her eyes, but through the crow's 1,000 eyes, her future. A woman in dark robes, standing before a sea of fire. A world of masks and candles, of laughter and terror, Halloween eternal, and at the center of it all, her smiling that same small smile she had worn as a child. When dawn came, Leila descended from the mountain. Her face was calm, her hands steady, but behind her eyes burned a reflection of the feather, alive, waiting. By the time she returned to the village, every crow in the forest had followed her. They perched on rooftops, on trees, on crosses, watching silently. From that day onward, no one dared to speak her name aloud. But they all knew, when the moon turned orange and the air smelled faintly of burnt wood, that Leila was still there, somewhere between the living and the forgotten. And if you walked past the old ruins of her house, you could still hear the crows whispering her name. Leila, the witch who learned to dream. The year the leaves turned black instead of gold, The villagers decided to hold a festival. They called it the Festival of Masks, a night to keep away the spirits, to dance, drink, and pretend that death could be bargained with laughter. For years, they had felt something in the air each autumn, a chill that didn't belong to the wind, whispers that moved between the fields when no one was there. And this year, the omens came earlier. Cows refused to cross the northern fields. Lantern flames bent inward instead of out. The crows never left the rooftops, so the priests declared that they would light great bonfires and wear carved masks to confuse the wandering souls. Every home would hang a pumpkin on its doorstep, carved with strange faces, to trick death into passing by. They didn't know that death already lived among them. Leila had watched from the forest all week. The villagers had forgotten her name, but not her shadow. She had grown tall now, her purple robe trailing like twilight mist, her auburn hair streaked with strands of silver. The mark of the feather, Nyx's gift, glowed faintly on her wrist for years. She had stayed silent, listening to the crows, studying the golden spell book that now burned brighter than any fire. And this year, the book had begun whispering again. It told her that the veil between worlds thinned when mortals laughed at their fears. That on this night, the one they called Halloween, the barrier could open, if she wished it, but what would she find? Her parents? The forgotten gods beneath the soil, or just the echo of her own curse? The book did not say, it only told her to light a fire, so she waited until the moon rose and full and orange, hanging low like an ember over the mountains. The air shimmered with mist, and the sound of drums came from the valley. Laughter, music, dancing feet over fallen leaves. The festival had begun. Leila walked toward the village slowly. Her steps silent, crows circled above her like a dark crown, their wings whispering in rhythm with the drums. She carried the spellbook close to her chest. Each page glowed with soft golden light, reflecting in her eyes. As she reached the outskirts of the village, the air changed. The scent of roasted apples, smoke, and fear mingled together. Children ran between the lanterns wearing crude masks, faces of beasts, gods, and ghosts. Their laughter echoed, bright but fragile. Then one of them stopped. A little boy in a paper skull mask. He looked at her. Through the holes in his mask, his eyes widened. "Miss, your face, your hat, it's the best costume I've ever seen." Leila smiled faintly. "Thank you, little one," she whispered, "but I'm not wearing a costume." He tilted his head. "Then what are you?" She leaned close, her voice soft as smoke. "I'm the reason they wear masks at all." Before he could answer, his mother called him away and the boy ran off into the light. Leila watched him go, her smile fading. She turned her gaze toward the great bonfire in the village square. They had built it tall, a mountain of logs crowned with a wooden effigy of a demon, painted red and black. The villagers danced around it in circles, their masks glowing in the firelight. The priests chanted old hymns, their words twisted versions of ancient Greek prayers. Leila stood at the edge of the crowd. No one noticed her at first. She blended into the chaos, just another masked figure. But when she lifted her hands, the wind changed. The fire bent sideways. Someone gasped. The drums faltered. The priest turned toward her, his mask carved like the face of Apollo. "Who are you, stranger? Why do you bring silence to our joy?" Leila's voice carried softly, but it reached every ear. "I bring truth," she said. "You celebrate what you do not understand. You mock what you should remember." The priest stepped closer. "Begone, witch!" "This is a holy night," she smiled, not unkindly. "Yes, holy indeed." She opened her spellbook. A golden glow spilled out, brighter than the fire. The air trembled, and every crow in the forest screamed at once. The bonfire collapsed inward, not extinguished but devoured, pulled into itself like a dying star. Out of the smoke rose faces, hundreds of them, half-formed, whispering in forgotten tongues. The villagers screamed, masks fell to the ground. The priest raised his cross, shouting prayers, but the wind tore the words away before they reached heaven. And then, amid the chaos, Leila spoke softly, her tone almost tender. "You wanted a festival for the dead," she said, "so let them dance." The shadows obeyed. From every corner of the village, from beneath the earth, from inside the wells and the trees, came the forgotten souls, and not monstrous, not vengeful. just lost. Children with hollow eyes, farmers with hands of ash, women whose hair moved like smoke. They joined the living in their dance, slow and swaying to a rhythm that belonged to no human drum. And for a moment, the living stopped screaming. They watched mesmerized, as the veil between life and death shimmered like silk. For that single heartbeat of eternity, the world was whole, every ghost reunited with its echo. Leila closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of the fire, the coolness of the moonlight, and the pulse of something ancient awakening beneath her feet. The spellbook whispered again. Now you see, child of night, Halloween is not a curse, it is remembrance. Tears filled her eyes, her voice broke into a whisper. Then why does it hurt so much? Because you still remember love. The wind picked up, scattering embers like fireflies. The shadows began to fade, drifting back into the soil, the trees, the stars. One by one, the ghosts disappeared, except two. Her parents stood before her, pale, luminous, their faces gentle. Her mother smiled sadly. Our little Leila, you did what we could not. You learned to listen. Her father reached out, his hand glowing faintly. But this magic, it will ask for more than you can give. She looked at them, trembling. Then I'll give it everything. Her mother shook her head. Even eternity? Leila hesitated. The crows screamed again, circling faster. The spellbook's light pulsed violently as if urging her toward an unseen edge. She nodded slowly. Even that, her parents faded into the mist, their final smiles lingering like the warmth of dying fire. When the sun rose the next morning, the village was empty. Only ashes and masks remained, scattered across the cobblestones. The bonfire pit was gone, replaced by a single circle of charred earth and a lone black feather at its center. High on the hill, where the forest began, a figure stood watching, a woman in a dark purple robe, her pointed hat tilted slightly, her auburn hair catching the first light of dawn. She held the glowing spellbook close, her lips curved into that same mischievous smile. And as the wind passed through the empty streets below, the pumpkins flickered one last time, their carved faces grinning in the daylight. Leila whispered to the horizon, every year they will light their fires and wear their masks, thinking they keep the darkness away. But I am the darkness that keeps them alive. She turned, vanishing into the mist, the crows following her like shadows reborn. Years passed, seasons changed, kingdoms rose and fell, but the forest around the forgotten village remained the same. Silent, shadowed and still. Where the houses once stood, there were only stones covered in moss and vines, and beneath them, roots twisted like ancient fingers holding secrets too old for memory. Yet every autumn, when the nights grew colder and the moon turned that same amber-orange hue, travelers whispered about a light, a single flame wandering the hills. Sometimes it flickered in the distance like a lantern, sometimes it appeared close enough to touch. But when they approached, it was gone. They said it belonged to a woman, a witch draped in violet twilight, her face hidden beneath the brim of a bent hat. Some said she was searching for her parents' souls, others said she was hunting for hearts strong enough to keep her fire alive, but no one who followed the light ever came back to tell the truth. The locals gave the place a name. The Lantern Path. They avoided it. Even shepherds refused to cross its trails, no matter how green the pastures. They said the wind there hummed like a lullaby, soft and beautiful, but if you listened too long, your own shadow would start whispering back. Still, there were always those who didn't believe. And one autumn night, 3 such souls climbed the hill to find the truth. Their names are gone now, lost to time, but the story remembers their shapes. Wandering minstrel with a broken lute, a scholar from Athens who sought evidence of curses, and a thief who laughed at ghosts. They carried lanterns and wine and songs to keep away the silence. But when they reached the crest of the hill, the air changed, warm and cold at once like breath on glass. Their lanterns dimmed, and out of the mist, the soft glow of another light appeared, golden, steady, alive. The minstrel was the first to see her. She sat beside a campfire that burned without wood, the flames rising directly from the earth. Her long, dark robe shimmered with faint reflections of the moon. A spellbook rested open on her lap, its pages turning on their own as though stirred by invisible hands. "Greetings, lady," the scholar said carefully. "We are travelers seeking knowledge. May we share your fire?" She looked up slowly, her eyes catching the firelight, deep auburn turning almost molten gold. "You already share it?" she said softly. "You've been walking inside my fire since you left the village below." The thief laughed. "And what are you supposed to be? The goddess of campfires?" Leila smiled faintly. "No, just the witch who made the first one." The minstrel frowned. "You mean the one who burned the village?" Her smile faded. "I didn't burn it. I simply reminded it of what it had forgotten, that the dead do not like to be mocked." The three men exchanged uneasy glances. The fire crackled louder, throwing sparks that swirled upward and vanished into mist. And as the wind shifted, they realized that every spark became a small glowing eye, watching, blinking, fading. "Tell me," Leila said, closing her spellbook, "why you've come." The scholar stepped forward. "I've studied the writings of Pythagoras, of the priests of Delphi, of the shadow texts of Eleusis. They speak of a woman bound to the night. I want to know if that's you." Her gaze softened. "You seek to name what has no name. I was once Leila. Now I'm just the echo of what the gods forgot." He bowed slightly. "Then you are proof that the soul endures, that the boundary between life and death." But she interrupted him, her voice turning sharp as the wind. "No boundary, no endurance. Only memory trapped in circles, replaying itself until someone dares to look away." The scholar fell silent. The thief snorted. "Sounds like a story for children." He tossed a pebble into her fire. It didn't hit the ground. It froze mid-air, glowing red, then disintegrated into dust. Leila turned her head slowly toward him. "You should not mock what listens when you speak." He opened his mouth to retort, but no sound came. His lips moved. His eyes widened, but his voice was gone. He stumbled backward, clutching his throat. The minstrel cried out, "What have you done?" Leila looked almost sad. "I just gave his shadow a turn to talk." Behind the thief, his shadow moved, and without him, it stretched tall and thin, its mouth open in a silent scream, and then, like smoke in reverse, it folded inward, swallowing him whole. When it vanished, only his lantern remained, rolling to a stop at Leila's feet. The scholar fell to his knees. "Please, witch of the lantern path, forgive us," Leila sighed. "I don't want forgiveness, and I don't want worship. I want understanding." She lifted the spellbook again, its golden light now pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. The minstrel, trembling, began to play his lute, a quiet melody, desperate but beautiful. Something in the music reached her, something human, fragile, and warm. She closed her eyes. The fire softened. The mist thinned. "I used to love that sound," she whispered. "My father played the same notes before the fire took him." The minstrel kept playing, tears falling silently down his face. Leila opened her eyes again, gentler now. She reached out, touching the air between them, and a feather of light drifted from her hand, landing on his lute. "When you sing of me," she said, "sing softly. The truth isn't cruel, it's just tired." And with that, she stood. The golden flame dimmed to a faint glow. The men blinked, and she was gone. The minstrel and the scholar ran down the hill, breathless, their lanterns flickering. When they reached the road, the sky was turning gray with dawn. Behind them, the hill burned with a strange light, not fire but memory, shimmering like heat over sand. The minstrel returned to the city and wrote songs about her, the witch of the lantern path, the lady who burns without fire. The scholar vanished, leaving behind only one page in his notes. I looked into her eyes and saw centuries. If she still remembers love, then the world is not yet lost, and so, each year the story grew. Pilgrims left candles at the edge of the forest. Children dared each other to find her light on Halloween night. Some claimed to hear music when the wind passed through the ruins. Some swore they saw her reflection in the river, a woman reading by firelight, her lips moving in silent spells. They said she was neither ghost nor goddess, just a keeper of doors, the one who watches over the flame that separates the living from the remembered. And if you listen closely, when the world grows quiet and the moon turns copper, you might still hear her voice. soft, steady, and full of ancient patience, whispering through the wind. Follow the lanterns, little ones, but don't forget, not every fire is meant to warm you. The nights after the lantern path incident grew quieter, yet not still. The forest seemed to breathe, its branches creaked, like ribs shifting under ancient lungs, and deep beneath the ruins of Leila's old home, something stirred, something that had waited centuries for her touch. It began with a whisper, not a voice, but the memory of one, like a thought rising from the earth itself. Daughter of flame. You remember us? Leila stood in the ruins of the burnt house, barefoot on the cold stones where she had once played as a child. The moon above was thinner now, a silver sickle cutting through low, drifting clouds. She looked down at the ground, where the whisper seemed to hum beneath her feet. The soil glowed faintly, threads of light spiraling upward. And there, embedded in the earth, she saw it, an ancient mirror. Its frame was made of obsidian and bone, carved with sigils that pulsed faintly like veins. The glass was black, but it reflected everything, the moon, her flame, even her breath. When she reached out, her reflection blinked before she did. Leila's voice trembled. "What are you?" The mirror shimmered. Then for the first time, a figure appeared within it, tall, veiled, and holding two torches that burned with opposite flames. One silver, one gold. Her eyes were hidden, but her voice echoed like 1,000 whispers moving as one. I am Hecate, the threshold between shadow and spark, between what was and what dares to be. Leila fell to her knees. Goddess of the crossroads, she breathed. Why call me now? The figure's outline flickered as if drawn by smoke and moonlight. Because you have wandered too long between forgiveness and fury. You are not mortal enough to rest, nor divine enough to command. You stand where I stand, am at the door of all things. And now, child of flame, the door must open. Leila's fire dimmed, her confidence cracking under the weight of the words. I never wanted this. I just wanted to understand why they feared me. Hecate's reflection tilted its head. Fear is the oldest prayer. They offered it to you as they once offered it to me. The wind rose. The trees bowed inward, their branches forming a circle around her. Within that circle, the air grew thick, not heavy but charged, as though the night itself waited to see what she would choose. Leila hesitated. Her reflection shimmered again, splitting into 3 versions of herself: the child, the woman, and the witch. Each looked at her with a different expression: curiosity, sorrow, and defiance. Hecate's voice rolled through the circle. These are the faces of your soul: innocence, grief, and power. All chained by memory, all begging to be unbound. The mirror began to tremble. The ground cracked open, revealing faintly glowing runes spiraling outward like roots. Leila reached out, placing both hands on the glass. Instantly, her body was flooded with visions. She saw cities burning in foreign lands: Troy, Carthage, Rome, where witches whispered her name like a curse and a blessing both. She saw temples lit with blue fire. She saw herself walking through time, untouched, unseen, eternal. And then she saw something stranger, a modern city by the sea. Lights like fallen stars, people wearing masks of plastic instead of magic. And through them all, her reflection, unchanged, always walking, always watching. She gasped, pulling her hands away. What is this? She whispered. What are you showing me? Hecate's torches flared, gold and silver twisting together. The truth of eternity. Everything repeats. Even you, even me. The world burns, rebuilds, forgets. And on the night of the mask, it remembers. Leila realized then she was seeing Halloween through time. Not just a festival, but an echo of the same night that had created her. Every flame lit in a pumpkin. Every child in disguise, every whispered fear. It all came from her story. Reborn through centuries, her voice trembled. So, the night of the dead, the lanterns, the masks, they're all because of me? Because of what you became, Hecate answered. Mortals remember fire even when they forget names. Leila's heart twisted with guilt and awe. Then what am I now? A ghost of a god? A curse? The goddess stepped closer, her face still hidden. You are the bridge. The living will dream of you. The dead will follow you. And when the veil between worlds thins, you must guide them. The mirror pulsed. And suddenly Leila saw herself holding a lantern made of bone and flame. Inside it, tiny souls fluttered like fireflies, glowing, fragile, whispering in languages she could not understand. She knew then, this was her purpose, to guide the lost, to carry their light across the dark. But not all spirits wanted guidance. As she watched, one of the tiny flames in her lantern turned black, twisting, writhing, hissing. It broke free, soaring upward like a burning crow. The forest howled in pain. Leila stumbled back, eyes wide. "What is that?" "A spirit that refuses peace," Hecate said. "Every guide must bear the ones who resist. Every light casts a shadow." The black flame flew into the night, spreading smoke that crawled across the ground. And in that smoke, faces formed. Faces of those she had burned, those she had cursed, those she had loved, her mother, her father, the thief from the lantern path, all whispering, "Why us, Leila?" Leila screamed. The lantern shook violently in her hands, its flame flickering between gold and black. Hecate's voice grew distant, echoing through layers of wind and thunder. "Choose, child of flame, compassion or control. You cannot hold both." Leila fell to her knees again, clutching the lantern to her chest, tears mixed with ash on her face. She looked at the burning souls within, tiny, trembling, alive, and then at the dark smoke coiling above. Thick with hatred, her voice broke into a whisper. "I choose to guide, even those who hate me." The mirror shattered with a sound like breaking time. Light flooded outward, a storm of sparks and shadows, spinning through the forest. When the light faded, Leila stood alone. The mirror was gone. The runes were gone, only the lantern remained, glowing faintly in her hands. From that night on, the lantern path changed. The travelers who ventured too close didn't vanish anymore. They returned, shaken but alive, whispering of a woman who led them through mist to safety, her eyes glowing like embers, her voice soft as sleep. But there were also others, those who refused to follow her light. Their shadows were found burned into the rocks at dawn, twisted as if frozen mid-fall. And high above them all, under the same orange moon, Leila walked, a lone figure with a lantern of souls, her footsteps silent, her heart both human and divine. They said her fire no longer sought revenge. It sought remembrance, and every Halloween, when the veil thins and the air grows heavy, the lost still whisper her name, not in fear but in longing. "Guide us, Leila of the lantern, keeper of the fire between worlds." The forest had fallen into a mournful rhythm. Each night, Leila walked the lantern path with her light held close, its flame flickering softly with the breath of wandering souls. The mist that once hid predators now parted before her like silk, whispering her name in reverence and fear alike. But this night was different. The air was colder, not just in touch, but in spirit. It felt empty, like a song missing its melody. Leila paused beside an old well covered in vines, her lantern glowing faintly gold. Inside it, the tiny souls hummed quietly, comforted by her presence. She sat beside the well, staring into the black water. When she heard it, a sound she hadn't heard in centuries, laughter, not the cruel, mocking laughter of spirits, but soft, childlike giggles drifting through the mist. Her grip on the lantern tightened. "Who's there?" No answer, only the faint patter of footsteps, bare feet on wet leaves. Then, shapes began to form in the fog, small, fragile silhouettes moving in a circle. Their voices rose, humming an old tune that made her chest ache. Round and round the lantern, bright. "We'll find the fire, we'll steal the light." Leila's voice broke in a whisper. "Children?" The mist thinned, revealing them. A dozen translucent figures, their eyes like hollow pearls, faces soft and unblinking. Each wore the faint echo of an old costume. A fox mask, a crooked crown, a tattered angel wing. They looked as though they had walked straight out of a forgotten village festival. One of them, a little boy no older than 8, stepped forward. He carried half a pumpkin, hollowed and burned from within. "Are you the lady with the light?" he asked. His voice sounded distant, as if underwater. Leila nodded slowly. "I am, but who are you?" The boy looked at the others. They gathered closer, their forms wavering in the wind. "We were waiting," he said simply. For someone to bring it back. Bring what back? The fire. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Leila's lantern flickered, and for a brief moment, she saw flashes of something older. An ancient village burning under a blood-red sky. Children screaming, masks melting, laughter turning to smoke. It came to her in waves, and a forgotten Halloween, long before the world called it by that name. A festival meant to honor the dead, twisted by greed and fire. Parents lit lanterns to guide their ancestors home, but when the flames grew too bright, the forest caught fire. The children never escaped. Leila felt her knees weaken. Her voice was soft, trembling. You were there. The first fire. The boy nodded. We wanted to play with the flames. We didn't know they would eat everything. A silence followed. Even the trees seemed to mourn. Leila lowered her lantern. I can guide you, she said gently. You don't need to wander anymore. But the boy's face darkened. His hollow eyes gleamed with something old, something hungry. We can't leave, he whispered. We're not lost. We're trapped. The others began to hum again. Louder now, their voices vibrating through the air like broken glass. Round and round the lantern bright. We'll take the flame and end the night. Their forms began to warp. Smiles widening, faces stretching, shadows bleeding from their feet into the ground. Leila stepped back, her heart pounding. Stop this, please. The little boy raised his pumpkin like a torch. The hollow carved grin glowed with black fire. If we can't rest, no one will. The ground erupted. Black smoke spiraled upward, wrapping around the children like ribbons of darkness. Their laughter turned into shrieks, echoing through the trees. From the smoke, shapes emerged, not children anymore, but hollow-eyed wraiths with skeletal wings and twisted masks that grinned too wide. Leila raised her lantern high. Stay back! The golden flame inside flared, pushing against the shadows. But the wraith children screamed louder, their hollow hands reaching. They wanted her light. They wanted to be whole again, even if it meant devouring her fire. The smallest wraith lunged first. Slamming into the barrier of her light, it hissed, burning away into ash. But for a moment, Leila saw its face again. A little girl, no older than she once was, whispering, "It hurts." Leila's voice softened. I know. She dropped to her knees, lowering the lantern until it rested on the ground. The flame steadied, no longer burning but glowing, calm and warm. The children froze. Their shadows quivered, uncertain. Leila reached her hands toward them, her eyes gentle. Take it, she said softly. Not to steal, but to remember. Let it warm you, not consume you. The boy hesitated. Then he reached out, his smoky fingers touching the edge of the light. The moment he did, the black fire vanished from his pumpkin. His body shimmered, turning pale gold, his eyes finally filled with light. One by one, the other children followed, their laughter returning. No longer cruel but free, they twirled around her lantern, their song changing. Round and round the lantern bright, we'll find the peace that ends the night. As the final verse faded, the children began to dissolve, not into ash or shadow, but into tiny golden sparks that drifted upward toward the moon. Leila watched, smiling through tears. Go home, little ones. The last spark, the boy with the pumpkin, lingered just a moment longer. He looked back at her and whispered, Will you be there? When we wake again? Leila nodded. Always. Then he too vanished, leaving behind only the faint smell of smoke and laughter. Silence settled once more. The forest glowed faintly, its mist turning silver under the moonlight. Leila stood alone beside the well, her lantern flickering softly in her hand. Inside it, the light burned stronger now, golden, pure, carrying the echoes of forgiven souls. She felt lighter, though she knew the road was far from over. The veil between worlds was thinning faster with each night. Soon, it would open completely, and not all that came through would be innocent. Leila turned toward the horizon. Far away, she could see faint firelight, not hers but something darker, rising from the ruins of an ancient temple. And through the wind came a sound she hadn't heard in lifetimes, the chanting of witches. Her hand tightened around the lantern. Someone's calling the dead again, she murmured. But this time, they won't be alone. She stepped into the mist, the path lighting beneath her feet. Above, the moon swelled red, a blood moon, heavy and unblinking, marking the return of power she had once feared to face. And deep beneath the earth, unseen, something old smiled in the dark. "Welcome back, my child of flame," it whispered. "The true night begins." The blood moon hung swollen above the world, its light dripping through the mist like wine over marble. The forest had grown quiet, but not still. Silence was never the absence of sound, only the gathering of what came next. Leila walked with her lantern raised high, its flame steady yet restless, as if aware that something vast and ancient had awoken nearby. She moved through the trees until they opened into a clearing, and there it stood, the ruins of a Greek temple, its pillars fractured but still reaching for the stars. Time had carved deep wounds into its stone, but faint carvings remained, visible. Serpents twined around moons, torches crossed like blades, and between them, the faint outline of a woman with 3 faces. Hecate, the triple goddess, her patron, her shadow. Leila's breath caught. The temple glowed faintly red beneath the moon, and from its heart came a hum, low, rhythmic, pulsing like a heartbeat. The smell of burnt herbs filled the air. She stepped closer, her bare feet brushing over ancient mosaics half buried in soil. Each tile she touched lit faintly gold, echoing her magic back to her. But beneath that light, another presence coiled, black, warm, and watching. As she neared the broken altar, she saw them. Figures cloaked in gray robes, standing in a circle, faces hidden by masks carved from bone. Their voices rose together in a chant older than time. "By flame of life and shadow's breath, awaken that which sleeps in death. Let the fire of Leila's soul complete the circle, make us whole." Her name in their mouths froze her where she stood. "How do you know me?" she demanded, her voice trembling like the lantern in her hand. One of the figures turned. Her mask was carved with a serpent's grin, and through its eye sockets burned the faintest glint of crimson fire. "We do not know you, Lantern Witch," the voice rasped. "We remember you." The others turned as well, 12 in total. They carried torches of blackened bone, their flames the color of blood and smoke. Leila's gaze swept the temple, searching for a way out, but the air shimmered, a barrier of flame circling the entire ruin. The witch's chant grew louder, the rhythm quickening, and in the center of their circle something began to rise. A pool of liquid shadow, swirling upward like smoke turned solid. Leila's eyes widened. "No, that can't be what I think it is." The serpent-masked witch tilted her head. "It is. The god that your fire once chained, the forgotten one beneath the crossroads. We bring him back with your light." Leila stepped forward, raising her lantern. "You don't understand what you're doing. That fire doesn't serve you." The witch laughed, her voice echoing through the temple. "It was yours once, but you've made it gentle, tame. We will remind it what it was born to be." The black pool in the center began to ripple violently. Shadows crawled outward like vines, latching onto the pillars. The carvings of serpents started to move, their stone eyes glowing crimson. Leila gritted her teeth. "You're summoning Erebus." The witch's chant grew into a scream. The shadow pool exploded upward, forming a massive column of darkness that twisted into a humanoid shape. Vast, headless, with arms of smoke and a heart burning like a dying star. The ground shook. The moon dimmed. And then from deep within that massive shadow, a voice spoke, deep, ancient, and terrible. "You cannot chain darkness with your pity, Leila of the Lantern. I was before your gods, and I will remain after your fire fades." Leila staggered back, gripping the lantern tight. She could feel her fire reacting, flickering wildly, trying to escape. Her heart pounded, each beat sending a pulse of gold through the night. The witches fell to their knees, their torches raised. "Rise, Father of the Void. Feed upon her flame, reclaim your crown." Erebus roared, not sound but force, tearing the air apart. The shadows leapt forward, crashing against the barrier of her light. For a moment, gold met black, 2 eternal fires colliding, sizzling, burning. Leila screamed, pouring everything into the lantern. Her voice cut through the chaos. "You were sealed because you devoured the world's first dawn. I won't let you take the night again." The goddess's sigil, Hecate's triple moon, flashed across her forehead. A circle of light erupted around her, pushing the shadows back, but the effort tore through her. She fell to her knees, the lantern slipping from her hand. Instantly, the witches lunged forward. The serpent-masked leader caught the lantern mid-air, holding it up as if in triumph. Its flame dimmed, flickering dangerously. Leila's voice cracked. "Don't." Too late. The witch opened the lantern. The golden light within screamed, 1,000 souls crying out in pain, then turned black. The energy burst outward, consuming the witches one by one. Their robes caught fire, but instead of burning away, they transformed, their bodies twisting into creatures made of smoke and bone, half human, half serpent. Their voices merged with the wind, howling in agony. Erebus drank it in. The shadow creature swelled, its body solidifying, eyes of burning gold opening within the dark. Leila crawled forward, gasping. "No, this is what he wants. He's feeding on you." But the witches no longer heard. They were nothing but vessels now. In the chaos, Leila felt a pulse beneath her, the faint echo of another power. Hecate's sigil on the temple floor, faint but alive. She pressed her palm against it, whispering, "Mother of thresholds, if ever you loved the balance, help me now." The ground trembled. A second light flared beneath her, blue and silver, cold and steady. It rose through her body, through her voice, through her flame. Leila stood. Her eyes blazed white. The lantern floated back to her hand, now burning with twin fire, gold and silver. Erebus turned toward her, its vast form looming like a mountain of night. "You cannot destroy what was never alive." Leila's voice echoed like thunder. "No, but I can send you back." She thrust the lantern forward. The twin flames shot out, weaving through the air like serpents of light. They struck Erebus square in the chest. The shadow screamed, the sound bending the sky itself. Pillars cracked. The blood moon shattered into fragments of red light that rained over the ruins. The witch's screams faded into wind. And finally, the darkness began to fold in on itself, drawn back into the pit from which it came. Leila held the lantern high, her whole body trembling. As the last of Erebus disappeared, the temple grew silent. Not the silence of dread, but of peace long delayed. She fell to her knees, panting, the lantern flickering weakly in her grasp. Ash drifted like snow, and somewhere in the distance, the first faint sound of dawn birds returned. But not everything was gone. Among the ashes, the serpent mask lay unbroken, its eyes glowing faintly red. Leila stared at it, a shiver crawling up her spine. "He's not destroyed," she whispered, "only sleeping again." The voice of Hecate murmured faintly in the wind. "All darkness sleeps, daughter of flame. Few rest forever." Leila stood, clutching her lantern to her chest. Her fire had survived, but it burned different now. Quieter, deeper, older. As she walked away from the ruins, she looked back once, the temple's shadows twisting like living, smoke around its stones and the mask watching her leave, smiling faintly. Far above, the shattered moon slowly stitched itself together, and from its broken light fell one last spark, landing gently in Leila's hand. She smiled faintly. "Then let's keep walking, little light. We're not done yet." The storm ended before sunrise. Leila walked for hours through the soaked hills until the forest gave way to cliffs overlooking the sea. The air was thick with salt, and the first orange light of dawn glowed weakly across the water. Below her stretched a forgotten coastal town, whitewashed walls, crooked rooftops and narrow streets that wound down toward a quiet harbor filled with abandoned boats. It looked like a painting someone had tried to erase, halfway, too clean, too still. A wooden sign leaned crooked near the entrance, its letters faded by wind and time. She brushed away moss and read the name carved there, Cardamile. Founded 1432, home of the Lost Festival. Leila frowned. The Lost Festival? The lantern in her hand flickered once, as if it knew something she didn't. The streets were deserted. Windows shuttered, doors chained. Flags rotted into colorless ribbons, and yet the place smelled faintly of smoke and pumpkin, the ghost of a holiday long gone. She passed a bakery, its shelves still lined with petrified loaves of bread. A tavern sign creaked overhead. The Black Lantern Inn. Her heart tightened. "Maybe I've been here before," she whispered. She stepped inside. Dust billowed like ash. The tavern's wooden floor groaned under her feet. There were chairs overturned, mugs left half full, as if everyone had stood up mid-laughter and never returned. She found a calendar, nailed to the wall. Every day was crossed out with black ink except one on October 31st, and under it, written in a child's shaky hand, "Never open the doors." Leila exhaled slowly. The sea outside murmured like something alive. By afternoon, she reached the central square. A fountain stood in the middle, dry and cracked. Statues surrounded it, 12 figures in cloaks, their hands raised toward the sky, the same number as the witches from the temple. Leila froze. Not possible. Each statue wore a mask, human faces twisted into faint, frozen smiles. The inscription beneath the fountain read, "Here they stood, the last celebrants of All Hallows, before the light betrayed them." She traced the letters with her finger. Her skin prickled. The lantern pulsed faintly gold. The air thickened. And she realized this was not just a town, it was a memory. Somewhere beneath these streets, the night of their final festival was trapped like an insect in amber. She turned when she heard it, the faint creak of a window opening. An old woman leaned out, her eyes pale as fog. "You shouldn't be here," the woman rasped. "Not before sunset." Leila stepped closer. "Why, what happens then?" The woman hesitated. "We tried to forget. The festival, the masks, the fire. But forgetting doesn't stop what remembers us." Her gaze fell to the lantern in Leila's hand. Her breath caught. "Where did you get that?" "It's mine," Leila said softly. "Why?" The woman's voice broke. "That's the Lantern of Souls. It belonged to the Witch of the Crossroads. She was the last flame bearer before the silence came. If you brought it here, child, you've woken them." Leila opened her mouth to ask who them meant, but the woman slammed the window shut. Evening descended unnaturally fast. The sun fell like a stone into the sea, and the mist rolled back in. Lanterns along the street flickered to life, not by fire but by memory. They glowed faintly orange, one by one, down every alley. Leila turned, heart pounding. No wind, no sound. Only the slow illumination of a ghostly celebration. And then came the bells. Soft, distant, ringing from nowhere and everywhere. The air shimmered, and before her eyes, the town came alive. People filled the streets and laughing, carrying candles, dressed in masks shaped like old gods and beasts. Children ran with ribbons. Women in veils sang songs in languages no longer spoken, but their faces, they were empty, not absent, hollow as though light itself had scooped out their souls. Leila's breath hitched. "Your echoes." None of them looked at her. They danced in slow, silent circles, the same motions looping endlessly. The fountain began to flow again, black water spilling over cracked stone, and within it, the 12 statues blinked. The lead statue turned its head, its mask, serpent-shaped, familiar. "Welcome home, Lantern Witch," it whispered. "The festival awaits." The air froze. Leila backed away, raising her lantern. The gold flame flared, but instead of pushing back the shadows, it split them, revealing flickers of faces beneath. These weren't statues, they were the witches, trapped between stone and smoke, cursed to relive their final ritual forever. Leila felt a deep sadness bloom in her chest. "You didn't deserve this," she murmured. "You were used." The serpent-faced witch smiled faintly. "We all were. By the same god you still carry inside that light." Leila's grip tightened on the lantern. "Erebus." "Yes," the witch said softly. "He feeds on memory now. Not on darkness, not on death, but on the act of remembering what should have faded. Every year when mortals speak his name on this night, he stirs again." Leila felt the truth settle like cold iron in her gut. Halloween, the night when the veil thins, was his invention, not a celebration of souls, but a feeding ground. The witch tilted her head. End it if you can, but remember, to destroy a god you must first forget him. The stone cracked. A fissure of light split through the fountain, tearing across the square. Leila stumbled back as the earth opened beneath her feet. Black water gushed upward, swallowing the ghostly townsfolk one by one. Their laughter turned to screams. Masks fell and floated like petals. The sky turned red. She ran, through collapsing alleys, past burning houses that flickered between real and unreal. The ghosts reached for her, their hands made of mist and regret. "Stay with us," they whispered. "We only wanted to remember." She burst through the last archway and reached the harbor. The sea had risen unnaturally high, glowing with the reflection of the blood moon. In its waves, she saw faces, thousands of them, all staring upward. The voice of Erebus echoed from the water, smooth and infinite. "You cannot unmake what memory protects, little flame. Forgetting me means forgetting yourself." Leila's reflection stared back, but her eyes weren't gold anymore. They were black, rippling like ink. She fell to her knees, gripping the lantern. "Then I'll remember differently." The flame burst open, swirling gold and silver again, and she plunged it into the sea. The waves convulsed, shrieking as though alive. The town behind her dissolved into smoke. The moon cracked. For a heartbeat, the world went completely silent, and then, a sound like breath after drowning. The sea calmed. The mist faded. The lantern dimmed, settling into a steady golden glow. When Leila opened her eyes, the town was gone, only ruins remained. Salt-worn walls, empty streets, a broken harbor. A single pumpkin floated by, its candle extinguished. She stood there for a long while, the sea wind tangling her hair, her hands trembling around the lantern's handle. As dawn crept back over the horizon, she whispered, "I'll find the rest of them. Every place he touched, every memory he stole, I'll end it." The flame answered with a gentle pulse. The faintest echo of her own voice came back from the waves. "We remember you, Leila of the Lantern. Walk while the night still breathes." She turned and began walking along the coast, her silhouette swallowed by the mist once more. The sun rose behind her, pale and uncertain, as if unsure it still belonged to the sky. And deep beneath the sea, something smiled. The path along the coast wound higher into the cliffs, twisting through fog that shimmered with fragments of moonlight. Leila walked barefoot now. Her boots had dissolved somewhere between the dream and the waking world. The ground felt strangely warm underfoot, as though fire still lived deep beneath the stone. The sea crashed below, rhythmic and endless, a pulse that seemed to echo her own heart. For the first time in days, the lantern did not flicker. Its flame burned steady and low, golden as candlelight in a tomb. She found comfort in that. The silence between its breaths, the way it hummed faintly when the wind touched it. Then she saw it. High above, built into the mountain's edge, stood an enormous monastery. Its towers were pale and broken, its windows hollow eyes staring at the horizon. Vines crawled up its cracked walls, and from a distance it seemed to float, as though the cliffs themselves bowed to hold it. A single bell hung from the tallest spire. It was cracked down the middle, and yet, she heard it ringing. The entrance lay beneath an arch carved with ancient Greek letters, so faded that only fragments remained. She could make out two words, Minimi and Aletheia, memory, truth. Inside, the air was cold and wet. Her footsteps echoed softly against marble floors veined with green light. She passed rows of statues, monks, saints, forgotten scholars, each holding an object, a book, a skull, a feather. But their faces were wrong. They were not serene. They were watching. Leila whispered, "This place remembers too much." The flame in her lantern flared once, as though agreeing. In the central hall, she found a great mural painted across the ceiling. It showed 12 angels, each with wings made of glass, descending toward a sea of fire. But one of them, the 13th, had no face at all. Its wings were shattered, and from the cracks spilled black smoke. Below it was written in Greek, They fell not for sin, but for remembering the light that left them. Leila's breath trembled. The mural looked centuries old, but beneath the dust, she saw fresh brush strokes. Someone, or something, had been repainting it. A whisper drifted from the shadows. "You carry the lantern of souls." She turned sharply. From the far end of the hall, a figure approached, slow, deliberate, gliding rather than walking. It was tall, robed in white so thin it almost glowed. Where a face should have been, there was only mirrored glass cracked like the bell outside. "Who are you?" Leila asked quietly. The figure bowed. "I am the keeper of forgotten dreams. Once I was a monk of this place. Now I am what remains of memory itself." Leila gripped the lantern tighter. "You know Erebus." The keeper tilted its head. "Erebus knows everyone. But few still speak his name. You are a dangerous exception, little witch." Leila stepped forward, her voice steady but soft. "He's feeding on the living. Every Halloween, every prayer, every candle lit for the dead, and it's all his harvest. I saw the town that forgot him. It vanished." The keeper traced a line through the air and glowing symbols appeared. Ancient runes, spinning like stars. Yes, forgetting is the only prison that holds him. But mortals are too fond of remembering their fears. The voice carried an ache centuries deep. It leaned closer. "You seek to destroy him, yet you carry his seed, the flame that remembers. That lantern is both your weapon and your chain." Leila felt the truth burn inside her chest. "I can't put it down." "No," the keeper whispered. "Not until the end." They walked together down a corridor lined with open doors. Inside each room, scenes flickered like moving paintings and fragments of lives long gone. In one, a mother rocked an invisible child. In another, a man sat at a desk writing with no ink, smiling at no one. In yet another, a young girl, perhaps 8, whispered spells in front of a mirror that reflected no face at all. Leila froze. The girl's hair was auburn. Her hat was too large for her head. It was her. She reached toward the doorway and the reflection turned, smiling. "Do you remember this?" it asked sweetly. Leila's throat tightened. "I remember the night my parents vanished. I thought I made it happen." "You did," the child said gently, "but not in the way you think." Then the room went dark, the image collapsing into shadow. Leila stumbled backward. The keeper's glass face rippled faintly. "Every dream you forget becomes part of this monastery," it said. "Every sin, every sorrow, every name you whisper to the dark. That is why I exist, to hold what mortals cannot bear." They reached a great circular chamber, open to the night. The cracked bell hung above, swaying slightly in the wind. The sea roared below, unseen but eternal. The keeper turned to her. "Tonight the glass angels descend once more. When they do, the veil will tear. You may pass into the memory where Erebus first formed. But beware, memory reshapes those who enter." Leila took a deep breath. "I've already been reshaped." The keeper reached out a long, pale hand. "Then I will open the gate for you. But before you go, answer one question." Leila met the mirror face without fear. "Ask." The keeper's voice softened, almost human. "When you burn his name from the world, when you end him, what will you become? When no one remembers you either?" The question hit her like a cold wind. She looked down at her lantern, the soft flame reflecting in her eyes. "I don't know," she said quietly, "but I'd rather be forgotten than remembered for the wrong reasons." The keeper bowed. "Then you are ready." The bell above them began to toll. Not once, not twice, 12 times. For the 12 witches, for the 12 lost festivals, for every echo of the forgotten, each note shattered like glass. Raining shards of light, the air rippled, and from the sky, they came, the glass angels. They descended in slow spirals, wings wide, each feather shimmering with frozen dreams. Their faces were veiled, their hands dripping with silver dust. As they circled the monastery, the shadows beneath them twisted into shapes, memories, prayers, fragments of human longing. The keeper spread its arms. "The gate of Neem opens. Walk through and claim your truth." Leila stepped forward, the lantern's light merging with the falling shards. When her foot touched the first circle of glass, the ground melted away into golden mist. She felt herself falling, but softly, as though the air itself remembered how to hold her. The keeper's final words echoed faintly. Dreams are memories rehearsing their own deaths. Don't let his dream outlive yours. Leila opened her eyes. She was no longer in the monastery. She stood on a black plain, stretching endlessly under a starless sky. The only light came from the lantern and from a colossal door in the distance, carved from obsidian and bone. Across its surface, written in fire, were the words, "The first Halloween." Leila took one slow breath. Her hands trembled, but her eyes burned with steady light. Then that's where it ends. She began to walk. Behind her, far away in the waking world, the cracked bell of the monastery tolled one last time, and shattered completely, scattering its pieces into the sea. The black plain stretched to eternity. No wind, no echo, only silence thick enough to crush the breath from her chest. Leila's lantern was the only thing alive. A small, steady heart of gold pulsing against the endless dark. Each time it flickered, the shadows seemed to breathe, as if the world itself were waiting for permission to wake. The door loomed ahead, vast, ancient, breathing faintly like a creature asleep. It was made of obsidian and bone, its carvings alive with shifting shapes, skulls turning into masks, flames twisting into children's faces, laughter unraveling into screams. At its center, a single eye, carved deep, opened as she approached. It wasn't an eye of flesh or spirit, but of pure memory. It remembered her. "Leila," it said, in the voice of her mother. The sound hit her like a heartbeat after death. "Why are you here?" the eye asked softly. Leila's voice trembled. "To end what I began." The eye blinked once when the movement shaking the plain, sending ripples through the black dust. "Then enter," it whispered, "and remember everything." The door opened not outward but inward, folding the world into itself. A great wind tore through, made of screams and candlelight, and Leila stepped into it. When her feet touched ground again, the darkness had changed. It was no longer void, and it was alive. She stood in a vast, ancient city built of marble and firelight. The sky burned orange, the air thick with smoke and incense. Every street was filled with people wearing masks, some beautiful, some grotesque. Drums pounded, voices sang, and flames danced in every window. And above them all, floating like a black sun, was a tower of bone crowned with a ring of candles. It pulsed in rhythm with the city's heart. Leila whispered, "This is where it began." The first Halloween, the first festival of souls. Children ran through the streets, carrying lanterns shaped like hollowed gourds. Their laughter was pure, but beneath it was something else, a tremor, an edge of desperation. They weren't celebrating, they were appeasing. An old woman stood at a crossroads, chanting softly while throwing herbs into a fire. Smoke curled upward, forming faces that cried silently before vanishing. Leila approached her. "Who are you calling?" The woman turned, her eyes clouded white, her face carved with years of sorrow. "The ones who never crossed," she said. "The ones who still listen when we whisper." Leila felt her stomach twist. This wasn't a festival of joy. It was fear dressed as tradition, and at the center of it all, the tower began to hum, deep, rhythmic, like a heart too large for its cage. She could see people gathering at its base, kneeling, their candles held high. From within, something vast began to move. The tower's doors burst open, and a figure emerged, tall, cloaked in smoke and flame. Its face was hidden, but its presence bent the air around it. The people cried out, not in fear, but in worship. "Erebus," Leila whispered. It was not a god in the mortal sense. It was a wound, a consciousness born from humanity's longing not to vanish. The first fear of death given voice, the first whisper that said, "Remember me." Erebus stretched out a hand, and every lantern in the city flared, thousands of tiny suns flickering in unison. The souls of the dead flowed upward like golden smoke, gathering in his palm. Leila could feel their pain, their confusion. They thought they were being saved. But Erebus laughed, a sound like stone grinding against bone. He closed his fist, and the golden light turned black. The crowd cheered. They didn't see what he'd done, they couldn't. Leila stumbled back, her pulse racing. No. No, this isn't a ritual. It's a feeding. She began to run through the streets, her lantern blazing brighter. Each corner showed her more horror disguised as devotion. Priests carving runes into the dead, children burning effigies made from their parents' hair, lovers burying each other alive beneath garlands of flowers, and through it all the same whisper. To remember is to live forever. Leila stopped at the base of the tower. She could feel Erebus above, a storm of souls trapped in the dark. Every heartbeat of his body sent waves of pain through the ground. She climbed. The stairs were slick with wax and ash, winding endlessly upward. Her hands shook, her breath ragged, but she didn't stop. The lantern pulsed stronger with each step, as if it too recognized the path. Halfway up, a voice spoke beside her. "You can't stop memory." She turned. A figure was walking beside her, her reflection. Older, colder. It wore the same robe, the same hat, but its eyes were empty. Its smile sharp. "Who are you?" "I'm what you'll become if you kill him," the reflection said. "The world will forget its fear. And without fear, it will forget you. You'll vanish with him." Leila hesitated, her steps slowing. The reflection's voice softened. "Don't you want to be remembered? To be loved again?" For a moment, she saw her parents' faces, warm, smiling, calling her name. The ache was unbearable. But then she saw the hollow children. Their laughter, their pain, and the way they dissolved into peace. She lifted her chin. "I'd rather be forgotten than be part of this lie." The reflection screamed and shattered like glass. Leila reached the top. Erebus waited there, seated on a throne of mirrors that reflected every life he'd ever consumed. Around him, the souls of millions burned like trapped stars, swirling in agony. He looked up, and for the first time, she saw his face. Not monstrous, not divine, but familiar. It was her father's face. "Leila," he said gently. "You made me." She froze. "That's not true." "Oh, but it is," Erebus said, his voice almost tender. "When you were a child, afraid of the dark, you whispered into the night, asking the shadows to keep you safe. And they heard you. They needed a name. You gave them mine." He spread his hands, and the world trembled. "I am every wish whispered by the lonely, every soul that refused to fade. I am the memory that refused to die." Leila stepped forward. "And I'm the light that burns when memory becomes rot." Erebus smiled, proud, almost loving. "Then come, daughter of darkness. Show me your fire." She raised the lantern. The flame inside was no longer golden. It was white, pure and searing. It hummed with every soul she'd freed, every memory she'd healed. Erebus rose, his form towering above her, wings of shadow spreading across the burning sky. The air split with thunder and whispers. The two forces met, shadow and light, memory and forgetting, colliding in a storm that tore through time itself. The city below screamed as centuries collapsed. Lanterns burst. Masks fell. The first Halloween, the first lie, began to crumble. Leila's feet lifted off the ground, her body dissolving into light. Erebus roared. "The sound of a god dying and being born all at once. You can't kill what the world remembers," he thundered. Leila's voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Then I'll teach it to forget." She shattered the lantern. The explosion was silent, a wave of light that erased sound, color and fear, every soul, every mask, every false god, gone in a single breath. And then there was nothing. When the light faded, Leila stood alone in the ruins of the tower. No city, no sky, just the soft, endless quiet of peace. In her hands, the lantern was gone. Only a single ember remained, small, warm, and alive. She smiled, tears glowing in her eyes. "Happy Halloween," she whispered, though no one was left to hear it. Above her, the stars returned, and one by one, like souls remembering how to shine. Silence, the kind of silence that doesn't just quiet the world, it quiets time. Leila stood alone on a hill of ash. The air was still, almost kind, smelling faintly of burnt sugar and candle smoke. The ground shimmered under her feet, every grain of dust glowing faintly, as if the remnants of the souls she'd freed had settled into the soil, giving the world its first peace in 1,000 years. She looked down at her hands. They were transparent now, edges soft, dissolving like mist. The fight with Erebus had taken more than she realized. Her body was unraveling, not in pain, but in purpose. The ember in her palm pulsed gently, the last spark of the lantern. A whisper rose around her, familiar and warm. The voices of the Hollow children, the villagers, the lost and forgotten, all murmuring in gratitude. Their tone was not mournful. It was lullaby soft, like a bedtime song hummed by the earth itself. "Sleep now," the voices said. "We remember you, even if no one else will." Leila smiled faintly. She looked toward the horizon, a place that no longer shimmered with fire or shadow, but with dawn, real dawn. Soft gold spilled slowly across the ash, painting the dead world in light. It was beautiful in its quiet simplicity. Somewhere beyond that horizon, the world began again. She saw glimpses, not with her eyes, but with her fading soul. Villages rising from the ashes, children laughing without masks, people lighting candles not for fear, but for warmth, for remembrance, not worship. They didn't know her name. They didn't know why Halloween had changed. But in every home, once a year, they placed a small candle in a hollowed fruit, a quiet tradition whose meaning had long been lost, yet whose comfort endured. "It's for the ones we love," a mother told her child in one of those flickering visions. "We light it so no one feels alone in the dark." Leila felt tears burn her fading eyes. That was enough. That was all she ever wanted. Wind stirred gently, carrying the first chill of autumn. Leaves rustled, and from somewhere deep within the veil of twilight, a familiar shape emerged and a boy's silhouette holding a lantern. "Samuel," she whispered. The hollow boy smiled, his edges glowing faintly blue, just like before. He walked to her barefoot, his steps leaving ripples in the air. "You did it," he said softly. His voice was no longer hollow. It was warm, human, alive with laughter. Leila knelt, her transparent hands trembling as she brushed his hair aside. "I didn't save them," she said. "They saved me." Samuel tilted his head. "You're leaving, aren't you?" She nodded. "I have to. The world doesn't need the Watcher anymore." He looked down, biting his lip. "But who will watch you?" Leila smiled, that quiet, broken smile of someone who finally understood. "The light will." They stood there together, watching the dawn grow. The last flame between them pulsed once more, slow, steady, fading like a heartbeat at rest. "Will I forget you?" Samuel asked. Leila placed the ember in his hands. "You'll remember what matters. The rest doesn't need to stay." The boy closed his eyes, holding the ember to his chest when he opened them again. The world around him was brighter. The hill was gone, the ash was gone. Only the faint sound of bells and wind through trees remained. Leila was gone too. 1,000 years later, Halloween night, the world had long since forgotten the wars, the old gods, the true name of the Watcher, but the tradition remained. Every year, people placed candles in carved pumpkins and whispered the same simple words: "Keep the light." Some said it was for the dead, others said it was for luck. But a few, very few, could feel something deeper in that flame. A pulse, a warmth that felt alive. Children told stories of a woman who walked the night carrying a lantern that never burned out. They said she protected the lost, guided the forgotten, and whispered comfort to those afraid of the dark. Most laughed, saying it was just a myth, but sometimes, on the quietest nights when the last candle flickered low, a soft hand would steady it, unseen but gentle. The flame would rise again, burning steadier, and the child would fall asleep smiling, unaware that someone was still watching, far beyond time, in a place where the night never ends and the stars hummed lullabies to the void. Leila opened her eyes once more. She was standing beside a vast river of light, the flow of every soul, every memory, every forgotten dream. Her hands were whole again, her robe silver and gold. And beside her stood others, countless lantern bearers, quiet and kind, tending to the endless current. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Each light they touched became a star, and each star became a story. Leila gazed into the river, and in its reflection, she saw the world of the living, and bright, loud, messy, beautiful. Children trick-or-treating in laughter, old people smiling at candles by their windows, and the warmth of remembrance glowing through the night. She whispered softly, "That's all I ever wanted." The wind carried her words away, scattering them across galaxies where they would become whispers, dreams, and maybe, someday, new myths. A single star pulsed brighter than the rest. It was Samuel's soul, now ancient and peaceful, still carrying that ember she had given him. He looked up toward her through the veil, smiling like a memory returning home. Leila reached out, touched the edge of his light, and whispered, "Happy Halloween, my boy." Then, with a final smile, she turned and walked into the horizon of stars, her lantern lighting the way for all who would follow. Epilogue, whispered narration, ASMR tone. And so, dear dreamer, when you light your candle tonight, when you see the flame dance and hear the wind sigh, remember, it's not the darkness that watches you. It's the light keeping you safe, whispering that you're not alone. Because somewhere, beyond the veil, Leila still walks the night, tending the lanterns of our hearts.